Hey Strikers, today we're going to be giving you an updated tier list. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently this time though. We're going to be doing a tier list for forwards, and we're going to be doing one for goalies. There's definitely been some strikers that have moved up and some that have moved down. But anyways, let's get started. So we're going to do the forward tier list first, and we're going to start off with Ai.Mi. I'm going to say as a forward, probably B tier. She has a lot of control of the map. You know, she can be just about anywhere. She has a projectile. Her ult is really good for zoning and for being used offensively and defensively, but she does kind of get beat up by teams that can get really in her face. And as a forward, I think she's good. She's good. Like, you know, she's not the best forward, but I think she's perfectly viable. If you're good on Ai.Mi, then she's fine. Next, we have Asher. After the mini rework, as a forward, I mean, she can't just crash the goal and just throw all her abilities and it's just going to go in every single time. Like, she can't necessarily do that anymore. Definitely not as reliably as before. That being said, I think she's still fine. She's still fine as a forward. I think she's a B tier forward. Like, again, you can still do her job and she can do it well. And she's also tankier. Like, they buffed her dash, so she gets a knockback resistance and a damage reduction. So she's very, very beefy. She's just a solid B tier. Next, we have Era. I don't think anything has changed. Era is still like a map control goddess. She's got a very, very loaded kit. She's still got her move speed boost, her shrink ray / growth ray. Her ult is still great. She's amazing. She is still one of the absolute best forwards in the game. She brings so much to every single team in terms of utility, goal scoring power, zoning. You can even like drop back and play defense, you know, in a pinch. She's amazing. She's absolutely S tier without question. Zentaro, honestly, Zentaro has been buffed a decent amount now. His primary and his secondary have all gotten damage and knockback buffs, and Vicious Vambrace and Tempo Swing just got buffed. So for a little bit, I thought that he was probably going to be just in B tier. There's a part of me that actually believes Zentaro might be at least a low A. I'm not going to put him in S, but he's had quite a few things buffed, not to mention his ult just got his cooldown lowered. I think that because of that, all his buffs combined, I think he's probably at least a low A. Again, my only issue with him, he is just kind of small. Like, his character model is just kind of small, which just kind of sucks. But I mean, you can always go build different and big fish to kind of fix that. But other than that, like, I think he's good. I think he's really good. I think he's a low A for sure. Juliette. Okay, so I know that Perfect Form and 1-2 Punch are out of the current awakening cycle after the micro patch, but I mean, she still does her job so well. Does 1-2 Punch make her job easier? Yes. Does Perfect Form make it easier? Yes. Can she still be that patrolling guard of the midfield and just KO anybody that's hanging around near the edges or getting lazy about their positioning? Of course she can. I don't think that Perfect Form and 1-2 Punch being out of the rotation is going to necessarily bring her down to any significant degree. Her kit is still her kit. Juliette is easily S tier, and I find it really funny that first awakening rotation, they take out 2 of her absolute best awakenings. Just a funny coincidence. Kai, as a forward, he's all right. Like, he doesn't have the same capabilities as a forward that he does as a goalie. He is very vulnerable to getting beat up when he doesn't have the goalie bonuses. Yeah, I mean, he's okay. I mean, you can play him. I don't think that he's as good as a lot of other picks. I think he's probably a C tier. I think that's probably where I would put Kai. He can, you know, he can still get some goals with his barrage, because his barrage is a stupid ability, whether that be as forward or goalie. But again, it's not that he's necessarily bad. It's just that there's a lot of better picks than him as a forward. All right, X, coming off of the patch that lowered, they said it was a bug fix that his hit radius or his strike radius was too big. I don't think that's a bug fix. I think it was just a nerf. I've played quite a few games of X since then, and I don't really feel that much of a difference. He's still so good at being a gigantic annoyance that can just beat up the other team. And honestly, there's just certain players that when X is on the enemy team, they're already kind of tilted, because if he's going in doing his job, it's just like, oh, well, that's just X being X. his presence alone changes the way that the other team plays the game. And I don't think that's enough for me to warrant dropping him down. Now, I know we put him in B in the first tier list that we made, and I can honestly say after playing my fair share of X games, he's definitely not B tier. I believe that he is definitely worthy of being an S tier pick. He is just so good at beating up the other team. He's so good at being disruptive, and without question, I think that he is worthy of being an S tier. Speaking of strikers that are worthy of being an S tier, we have Octavia. Octavia is so fast. She just turns on her secondary and she can just dribble to herself. She can use her ult to hit the core other players to keep her secondary going. She can use her primary to keep it going. She can use her primary to score goals. She can just run circles around people. And eventually she builds up enough stacks of her secondary. She's just going to be able to score by herself frequently enough. Now, I will say that I believe that Octavia definitely benefits from you being in a game with a friend, you being queued as a duo or even a trio. I think she's definitely stronger in that role than as solo. As solo, she's still very, very good, and I think she's S tier no matter what. But it is worth noting that with a pre-made, she's definitely better than she is as a solo. Again, still S tier, just something that I felt like mentioning. When we're mentioning Octavia, let's also mention Vyce. Vyce is also S tier. She has a very loaded offensive kit. She has a decent range primary that she can use to double hit the core. She can use it to harass. She has her jump, which she can use to KO enemies that are too close to the edge, or she can just use it to pass to herself. She can throw her secondary to the top half of the field, pass it up to where her secondary went, then teleport to it, and then score a goal. Not to mention, her ult is nuts. It does so much damage. It has tons of knockback, and it's just a great way to score surprise goals. Like, you can charge up your ult, and the moment the core gets next to you, you don't even have to use it to kill people. You can just use it, and if the core flies near you and it's at a good angle, you release it, and the core flies as fast as it possibly can. It reaches the max speed that the core can fly, even early on in the game, I'm pretty sure. And enemy goalies are going to be caught off guard by it sometimes. She's a KO goddess, and she can use her abilities to be a map control forward as well. She can fill 2 roles at once. And because of that ability, I think that Vyce along with Juliette are probably the 2 best solo queue forwards, in my personal opinion, in the game. I would probably say Vyce may be a bit better because as great as Juliette is, she can't map control the way that Vyce can. I actually believe Vyce is the single best solo queue forward in the game at this moment. All right, moving on to Rune. Rune as a forward. Okay, so Rune has gotten quite a bit of buffs to his damage and knockback. Rune actually hurts quite a bit right now. His anomalies and his banish do quite a bit of damage now. I mean, it's a little surprising sometimes. That being said, he still functions the way that he did before. So, like, at his core, he's still good. I think his damage is definitely something that should be considered when you're thinking about the possibility of playing him, because he does, like, more than people think. And so because of that, I would probably put Rune forward. I want to put him at least at a low B tier. It kind of boils down to player skill. Like we've mentioned before, if you're good at him, then by all means, go nuts. But if you're not, then just play someone else. I mean, if you're trying to win, that is. Next, we have Drek'ar Forward. I think it's fine. I see it sometimes. It's still good. He can still do his job. He can double hit with his primary. He's fast with his secondary. Stealth can catch some people off guard. He's good at getting sneaky KOs with his stealth. His ult can be used to target enemies and get them low to where you don't even necessarily have to kill them, but you can get them low to the point where they're going to be hesitant to play as aggressively as they normally would. And yeah, I think Drek'ar is fine. I think he's a solid B tier as a forward. Not really much else to say. All right, Juno. Juno is so annoying. If I'm being honest with everybody, if I'm playing solo and I don't have a Juno player on my team, she's likely to be my ban. She just does so much. She has so much control of the map with her jump, all her blobos, and she does so much damage. I know that they nerfed the damage on her primary a little bit recently, but I don't think it's gonna do a ton. It's a good start, but she just does everything as a forward. She can play up, she can play back, she can play offensively, she can play defensively, she can crash the net, she can KO people. Like, she does basically everything well. She does everything really well. What exactly is her weakness? I know we've said that she's vulnerable vulnerable to getting beat up by an X or a Juliette or a Vyce even. But I see people hovering X in picks bans, and they will ban Juno because she's that much of a nuisance. Like, yeah, an X is usually going to be able to do pretty well against a Juno, but it speaks volumes when you see X players banning Juno. She is without question S tier, and I'm surprised that she hasn't been nerfed more. Moving on to Dubu. I see some Dubus play forward, and Dubu Forward has the potential to be good. It really does. I've seen Dubu Forwards that do well, and they're a gigantic nuisance. They have a giant hitbox. Their abilities are really annoying for a Dubu that doesn't have to play in his own net. When you can throw a Tofu Fortress on the other team's side of the field, and you don't have to fall back, it's pretty annoying for the other team. That being said, it takes a lot of mastery to be able to play Dubu Forward very well. I've only seen it a couple times, and I've seen some bad ones, and the bad ones are a liability. I don't think I can place him much higher than C. He can be very good if you're really good with him, but he has high cooldowns, and you need to know when to pick your spots with those cooldowns. Otherwise, he is very, very vulnerable to getting abused. Luna, as a forward, is B tier. As a forward, she's good. She's got her missiles that she can deal damage with them, or she can use them to score goals. It's on a low enough cooldown to where she's got the flexibility to do that. Her dash is always good for getting those cheeky goals. You can use her ult to burn everyone's elusive or deal a lot of damage, either or. Her issue is her small hitbox, and she's just very, very slow, and she can get beat up as well. But, I mean, she's okay. Like, she's good. She can do the job of a forward fairly well. Next, we have Rasmus. I will be honest, I have no idea why I do not see more people playing Rasmus. I understand that he's harder to play and harder to grasp and understand than some of the other strikers in the game. He has some really cool tricks up his sleeve. The fact that he can ult the core when he's at the top of the goal and pull it towards him and knock it into the goal. A lot of goalies are just not ready for Rasmus to be able to just do that. Typically, you have two forwards in those positions and one passes it to the other, and then the goalie might be able to actually adjust in all likelihood. When it's just one forward that can just pull the core up to himself at a very high speed and then knock it in, that's something that you need to account for on just one forward. And he's really the only one. So with all the unique and crafty stuff that he can do, I think he's absolutely an A tier forward. Next, we have Estelle. I know we've been seeing a lot more Estelle Goalie recently, and rightfully so. It's viable, it's good. But Estelle as a forward is still no slouch. She still has tons of projectiles that she can use to double hit the core. She has her blink to surprise people that are clearing up when she's down or down when she's up. Like, she's still a great forward. If you're good at Estelle and you're winning a lot of games with her, don't stop playing her now. Like, there's nothing to lead me to believe that she isn't still at least an A tier forward, in my opinion. And that's where she belongs. She belongs in A tier. All right, and last we have Atlas Forward, not goalie, and I see it every now and then, honestly, and yeah, it looks like it can be annoying to face sometimes, but I mean, his lack of mobility is probably worse as a forward than it is as a goalie. There are just too many situations where Atlas as a forward is just not going to really have an answer, and because of that alone, I think that he's probably the only forward that I would put in D tier. I see a couple people that played a lot and are not bad with it, but this is of course for the overwhelming majority of players, and so for that I think that he does belong in D tier. Now we are moving on to the goalie tier list, and with the goalie tier list, we again will start off with Ai.Mi as a goalie is easily an A tier. She has a great ult for playing goalie that is very, very difficult to get through. She can play offensively with both her primary and her secondary, and her mobility on her secondary allows her to make saves from the top side of the goal to the bottom side and the bottom to the top. She's just really, really good. She's one of the best goalies in the game, has been since release, and that has yet to change. Asher as a goalie is about the same as she was before. Her changes are not that big as a goalie. Her primary is the only ability that gives her that barrier, but honestly, I don't really think anything has changed on her for the most part as a goalie. Yeah, she's bulkier with the secondary buff that she got with the resistance and knockback, but I think she's still solid. I think she's B tier. And then we have Era. I love my girl Era, but she probably shouldn't be a goalie. She is a C tier goalie, and that's me being a little bit nice about it, because I love her so much. She's just not very good at clearing. Yeah, she has mobility and she has her primary and her ult, but her cooldowns are just too long and it just feels bad. Like, she can clear one time, and if there's any more pressure on the goal outside of that one clear that she has to make, she just feels very, very vulnerable as a goalie. So she's C tier. Going to basically the other end of the spectrum, we have Kai, who is S tier. He is, in my opinion, the only true S tier goalie in the entire game. I hate playing against Kai goalie. It's so annoying. He's so good with all the awakenings that he can possibly get. The later the game goes, the more awakenings that he can get, the stronger he gets, the more annoying that he gets to get through and around because he's fast. He has so many projectiles. And if you grab the right awakenings on him and you're good enough as a goalie, he is just a steel curtain. You cannot get past him unless you just throw an immense amount of pressure his way. If you're a goalie main and you seriously want to climb, I don't think there's any other goalie that I would recommend you play. Kai is absolutely your man. Zentaro Goalie, yeah, let's just not do that. I mean, it's technically functional, but definitely not good, and I would not recommend anybody play it. So yeah, Zentaro is a D tier goalie. Speaking of goalies that I would recommend that people not play, Juliette. I would definitely recommend that Juliette is not a goalie that you should play, unless your name is BunnyMuffins, in which case you're 1-0 on Juliette Goalie, you have a 100% win rate, and he's flop-dwop approved. So yeah, unless your name is BunnyMuffins, don't play Juliette Goalie. It's just also not very good. What I have seen a couple of times, though, is X Goalie. And X, on the other hand, is, well, he's not, like, worthless as a goalie. It's kind of a meme goalie, but it can kind of work. I probably would put X in C tier. Probably maybe like a mid to low C tier, just because he can get a lot of size, and with his ult, he's gigantic, and he takes up, like, half the goal. So it's just kind of funny to see, and it can actually kind of work, too. But I would still probably not recommend it, but it is better than Zentaro and Juliette, but only marginally, I'd say. Octavia Goalie, I think, is probably okay, probably better than Era and X. I think it's high C. If the enemy team crashes her net, she really does not have an answer, and that's just a very, very easy formula to abuse, and because of that, I don't think I can put her anything higher than C. Vyce Goalie, on the other hand, I think might actually be kind of decent. I played with one recently that was actually pretty good. While I don't think that it's top tier or anything, I think it's definitely one that is worth experimenting with. She has a projectile, she has a jump that can also deal damage, and has a pretty decent amount of range, so you might be able to score a surprise KO on the edge with it. And her ult is really good for just blocking off your own goal for 2 seconds, or even scoring a surprise goal on the enemy goalie. It's kind of like a bootleg core flip in a way. But yeah, she has a projectile, she has some mobility, she has KO power, she has some goal scoring potential. I think she's actually a fairly solid B tier goalie, if I'm being honest. Rune as a goalie, I personally like Rune as a goalie. I think he's a solid B tier goalie, especially with all the damage that he's gotten now. He's going to be a bit of a bully goalie in some ways, with his ability to banish and use his anomalies on anyone that crashes the net against him. I think he's pretty good. I think he's a B tier goalie for sure. Drek'ar Goalie, I think, is still A tier. I think if he's played right with the right awakenings, he's great. His primary is almost always up. His stealth and mobility is really powerful as a goalie, and his ult is really good when used defensively, and he can even use it offensively as a goalie. I mean, there's not really much else to say. He's just a very well-rounded goalie. He's great. He's an A tier goalie without question. So I would definitely put Juno Goalie as a B tier. She's good. I see a fair amount of Juno goalies that can do well. She has her limitations, but you have a Juno on your team, and her blobos, she can use them defensively, and even as a goalie, she can still use them offensively. It's not uncommon to see a Juno goalie score 3 goals in a game. It's something that can happen very regularly, and so yeah, I think she's solid. I think she's a B tier goalie. Okay, Luna. Okay, I have a very strained relationship with Luna goalies. My Luna goalies are usually very bad, and the enemy Luna goalies are also usually not that great. So I personally don't think very highly of Luna Goalie. However, I have seen Luna goalies that are legitimately good, and I'm not going to let my personal experiences with and against Luna goalies blind me from the fact that there are players that are actually really good at Luna goalies Goalie. That being said, I still think that she's B tier. I'm not willing to put her any higher than that. If you're really good with her, you're really good with her. She's probably the best offensive goalie in the game. She still does a lot of damage. She can get cheeky goals with her dash, especially as a goalie. Her ult is still good. I mean, she's fine. If you're a good Luna goalie, then you're a good Luna goalie. And if you're not a good Luna goalie, well, then you're probably in my game in some capacity. Just kidding. Next, we have Dubu. Dubu, the goalie, is fine. He's like, when you think of a goalie in a game like this, you honestly think of Dubu and his kit. He's gotten some buffs, but there's just options that are maybe a little bit better than him, and he's fine. There's a lot of people that are Dubu one tricks that do really well and can climb pretty high, so I think he's a solid B tier. Rasmus as a goalie, I mean, is just not very good. I was thinking of being nice and putting him in C tier, but his kit is very much not meant to be a goalie. It's just not. He has too much great offensive potential to waste it by sitting in your goal, and that's about all that needs to be said about him. Estelle as a goalie is very good. I mean, I've seen some Estelle goalies that are great, like really, really good. With the right awakenings, she can be a very big nuisance for the enemy team to go through, go around, try to get her when her abilities are off cooldown. Yeah, Estelle goalie is just very good. She has a lot of tools up her sleeve to make saves and score goals when the enemy team is least expecting it. Honestly, I really, really like Estelle as a goalie. I think that she is an A tier goalie. I don't know if I would necessarily put her ahead of Ai.Mi or Drek'ar. I think she's a low A tier goalie. And last but not least, I know what everyone's probably been waiting for, Atlas. Now, for anybody that's watched our previous tier list and saw where we ranked Atlas and we put him in D tier, let me first start by saying we accept everything that we were given for that, because he is definitely not a D tier goalie. We have played our fair share of games with him and our fair share of games against him, and he is definitely not a D tier goalie. However, I am not going to sit here and say that he is the best goalie in the game, because he is not. I believe that sometimes when you pick Atlas, he can become an S tier pick. He can become an A tier pick. On the flip side, you can pick Atlas and he can become a C tier pick. If you get stacks on stacks, glass cannon, twin drive, some really powerful awakenings on him in the right situation on the right map, like if you get Atlas on Atlas Lab or Demon Deus, the new map, he could probably consistently be an A tier or even S tier pick, especially depending on awakenings. But there are just some situations where if he doesn't get the right awakenings, or you don't pick him onto one of his best maps, that he might just be a B tier pick, or he might even be a C tier pick. It's all dependent. And he is probably the only true goalie that falls into this category. And because of that, I think that Atlas is probably a high B or a low A. And I think that he probably is a high B. It really depends. It depends on a lot of factors. And because he has so many factors and so many variables, that he can look like an S tier pick, or he can look like an A tier pick, he can look like a B tier pick, he can look like a C tier pick. Because of that variance, I can't place him too terribly high on the list. I acknowledge that there's a time and place where he can look like he's an A tier pick, or he can look like he's an S tier pick. But can he game in and game out be an S tier pick? I can't say that. Can he game in and game out be an A tier pick? I can't say that, because there's too many variables at play. But Atlas is definitely a very good goalie. Enough said. There you have it. That's our updated tier list. What do you guys think? What did we get right? Do you disagree with some of our placements? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.